Hey there nation, this is Commander CheapSkate and welcome to the show where we show you how to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. And this is my very first battle report dealing with the 9th Age. I've been doing a lot of Age of Sigmar battle reports, but recently Lord Tremendous, who is a YouTuber that I kind of subscribe to, he's a Warhammer YouTuber, just like the rest of us in the community, basically he's putting up battle reports for the 9th Age. At first I was kind of on the fence on the topic because the game seemed that I didn't know if it was going to be as good as the 8th edition of Warhammer was, and it kind of brought back some pain that I had for the game that basically got killed, and I was just starting to get used to doing Age of Sigmar. But I commented on one of his videos like you should definitely download the rules and try it. So Lord Tremendous, I thank you for this one. So because of that, we are now doing my very first 9th Age battle report. It is I, Commander CheapSkate of the Legion of the Hellmouth, which is my Ogre Khans army, versus King Khalifa of the Schwarzwald Free Companies, which is the Empire of Sonnstahl. So this is a 2,000 point battle. Let's see what happens when Ogre Khans basically fight it out with Empire. Alright, with the horns of war sounded, let's go and talk about my army. This is the Legion of the Hellmouth. It is a great Ogre Khans army. Let's go over and talk about my Lords of Heroes choices. First of all, we have Tai Jin Khan, the Hell Fist. He is a great Khan with a mark of change, the Hell Fist big name, and his magic items are the Armor of Destiny, the Death Stone, and the Charm of the Cursed Icon. So I'm going with kind of like a chaosy type of Ogre Khan army, hence the name, the Legion of the Hellmouth. Basically, this guy is basically meant to be unkillable. He's got the Armor of Destiny with heavy armor with the 4+ ward save, plus he's got the Death Stone to kind of help out with those fail rerolls, and plus with the Charm of Cursed Iron, if my opponent brings any war machines, and since the Empire of Sonnstahl he will, it'll give my unit kind of like a 5 of war save as well. Next up to him comes Crom Rotten Jaw, the Balefire. He is a great shaman with a Mark of Change, level 4 upgrade, Greater Fire Blessing, Path of Alchemy, which is free because it's part of his group, Iron Fist, and he has the Rotten Jaw big name, which I kind of like because it gives him poison attacks, and basically his unit poison attacks too, if he should ever basically need it for the battle. And then finally, rounding up my hero choices is Korgul Khan, the Spine Splitter. He is a Khan who is my Battle Center Bearer upgrade. His magic items are the Dragon's Skin Banner. His big name is the Spine Splitter, and plus he has Mark of Wrath and Iron Fist. And so this guy is kind of like my go-to combat guy when it comes to all of his stuff. Alright, next let's talk about my core choices. We have the Blight Kings, which are 6 Ogre Tribesmen with Champion Musician, Standard Bearer, the Skull of Queen Get with heavy armor, Iron Fists, and the Mark of Pestilence. After that, my second core choice is the Wrathmongers, which is 6 Bruisers with the Champion Musician, Standard Bearer, and Marks of Wrath. And the Blight Kings are kind of like there to kind of give as a bunker for my Shaman, whereas the Wrathmongers are kind of acting as the bunker for my Khan as well as Greater Khans. That way they can fight out in combat. So that makes up my core choices. And finally, we're going to go to my special rare choices. For my special choice, we have the Immolators, which are 4 Bombardiers equipped with the Marks of Change, which I kind of like because you can switch between flaming attacks, magical attacks, divine attacks, or hellfire attacks, which I think is kind of useful for those guys. And then for my 2 rare choices, we have the Anvil of Hell, which is a Thunder Cannon equipped with the Mark of Change, and Hammer of the Gods, which is my second Thunder Cannon with the Mark of Change as well. And that brings my army up to a grand total of 1,997 points. Basically, all my ranged guys have Marks of Change so they can alternate between the things they need to in order to defeat the most opponents, and the rest of it's just close combat. So yeah, that pretty much makes up my army for this one. And here is King Khalifa's army list with the Schwarzwald Free Companies for the Empire of Sonnstahl. I'm not really going to go over it narratively and just let you guys scroll past and let some music in the background. So if you want to see anything that you want to look at specifically, you could slow down the video at your leisure. So enjoy. Alright, that being said, here is deployment. So here we are laid out with both of our armies. Ogre Khans, which is my army there in the center and the bottom part of the map, and on the top part of the map is my opponent's army. Basically, we rolled off to see who goes first. I went first. I deploy my entire army, so that way I had the first turn, and then my opponent, of course, set up his army accordingly on the other side. So let's break it down to the individual deployment areas. All right, let's go start about the left side of my army. As you can see, I got the Anvil of Hell as well as the Hammer of the Gods, which are my two Iron Blaster cannons. Thunder cannons, rather. They're lined up right there on the left-hand side. Right next to them is my unit, the Wrathmongers, which is my Bruisers. Inside that unit is also Ogre Khans, which is my Battle Standard Bearer, as well as my Tyrant. Not Tyrant. Great Khan, Taijin the Hellfist. He's also located there as well. So that is the deployment on the left-hand side of my army. And on the right hand side, we have my 7 tribesmen, which are my Blight Kings, as well as my Rotten Jaw character, who's basically my shaman, is located there. On the far right hand side, there you have my Immolators, which is my 4 Bombardiers. So that is the plan for the right hand side of my army. And I just gotta tell you now, getting used to calling these guys their 9th Age equivalent names is getting kind of rough. So, anyways, that is my army for this one and deployment. Alright, here's the Empire of Sonnstahl deployment. Here's King Khalifa's army. As you can see there in front, in the front center, he has his Queen's Rangers as well as Rommel's Rangers. There's basically his 2 units of state militia with bows as well as skirmishers. Behind them, he has his big block of Imperial Guard, armed with hand weapons and shield as well as plate armor. He's also got his wizard, his warrior priest, his battle standard bearer, and his general located in that unit as well. Behind them, you have the light infantry guys, who are also seasoned soldiers as well, with the handguns. And off to the left there, you basically see his wizard, which is Victor Hell's Breath of the Wilds. Right next to him, you got the Blue Company, which is a unit of seasoned heavy infantry with halberds and shields as well. And of course, the far right-hand side there you have his 2 steam tanks, the Panzer Baron as well as Panzer Wolf, rather. As you can see, that makes up his army. People are going to say that you can't have 2 steam tanks in an army, and while they might be right because the rules say you can't do that because steam tanks are one of a kind, in my group we really don't care about those rules. We ignore the one of a kind rules. We also ignore cap sizes on units as well. We don't think that's really important, and we don't think it's actually going to have a metric factor in this game as well when you play out these battles. So yeah, as you see in the battle reports, we talk about how these issues kind of basically get resolved just through regular game playing. So that is my armed deployment on this one. Alright, so this is turn number 1 after movements. As you can see in this portion of the photo, basically I just sent everything as fast as I could straight to the center line to where the Empire of Sonnstahl forces were located at. I sent my bombardiers over to that crest of the hill so that way they can kind of peek over the top of the hill and still engage targets, but at the same time can't receive any return fire from the enemy, so that's why they set up along that hill there. I put my Wrathmongers as well as my Blight Kings with their respective characters towards the center, planning on charging to Rommel's Rangers as well as the Queen's Rangers there to try to get into the main lines. On the left-hand side there, as you can see, I got my Thunder Cannons kind of rolling up on the left-hand flank there to start putting in some support shots of those cannons in order to take out those steam tanks. So that's pretty much movement on this side of the board. With movement out of the way, we go directly into the magic phase, and it was pretty freaking epic. I basically cast Transmutation, Final Transmutation of Gold. I forgot what the name of the spell is. That's the very last spell that you can get for the Metal of Alchemy that turns everyone into gold. And basically I got that overpowered, so because of that, that spell completely went off. Rolled for all that. For the most part, only about 7 of the Imperial Guard guys in that unit in the center there were basically lost. But the biggest victories, that was the most important one, was I took out both King Khalifa's martial character as well as his battle standard bearer in the first go around on the spell. So that part was pretty freaking epic. Now the entire army in that location is affected with stupidity because they're next to that unit. I killed off 7 Imperial Guard. Now they have no inspiring presence. They have no hold your ground. This between you and me, this part basically lets me know that this is going to be pretty easy now. All the leadership they're relying on now is their wizards. So that part was pretty epic. So that is magic phase for me on this side of the board. Unfortunately for me though, Final Transmutation was overpowered and basically I rolled a 5 on the miscast chart.
Klaatu, Marata,
which in the great scheme of things wasn't so bad. I only have 1 wizard on the board anyway, so basically it took strength 5 hit and managed to get off. I wasn't able to armor save it, so because of that, I now have 1 wound inflicted onto my my great shaman on that part. So the poor guy is basically bleeding a little bit from the impact. But you know what? Forget the fact I killed my opponent's general as well as his battle standard bearer as well as a couple of his Imperial Guard and gaining stupidity at the process. Small price to pay as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, that pretty much rounds up my magic phase, and with that done, we go down to the shooting phase. As you can see in this picture, my bombardiers open up onto that unit of the Blue Company, I believe that's what they're called, the heavy infantry guys. On the right-hand side, I managed to kill 7 of those guys. I originally only killed 5 with my hits, but because I use Hellfire, which is one of the abilities you can use with Market Change, one of the different types of attacks you can use, they get killed 2 more with the Hellfire rule with those Strength 3 hits, so it's pretty freaking epic. So I'm really liking the Market Change. It's kind of like not only do you get to stick it to your opponent one time, but you get to do it again with a backup attack, so that was pretty cool. So that part happened there. These guys would have tested for panic under normal circumstances. circumstances, but because they're affected by stupidity, they're immune to psychology. So that is shooting for this side. And on this side, both of my Thunder Cannons open up on Panzer Baron, which is the painted steam tank there as well, and they put on 6 wounds on that bad boy. Didn't manage to put on the last one to finally kill that thing, but I'll take what I can get. Now, this is the part where basically I'm going to gripe a little bit when it comes to Ninth Age. I think in Ninth Age, one of the problems that they have is that they kind of nerfed a lot of things. They kind of downplayed a lot of the magic part, for example. They also did a number on cannons. You have to use ballistic skill now and to do your shots, and your damage is only like half of what it used to be, and unlike other previous editions as well. So I thought they kind of nerfed cannons a little unfairly in this game. Not that I used cannons a lot in my other previous battle reports. I usually was a victim of cannons, but at the same time though, I kind of nerfed it a little bit, so it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. Same thing with putting unit size caps and things like that. But the game's pretty good so far, so that's my only real complaint I have for this video. But yeah, managed to put 6 wounds on the Panzer Baron, didn't manage to kill it at all, but that's just the way that Ninth Age rolls, I guess. So with that out of the way, with no combat, we go directly into the Empire of Sonnstahl's turn. So this is turn number 1 for my opponent, for King Khalifa, and unfortunately there's not a lot of movement going on, and the reason why is because of the stupidity rules that I put on that. With their battle standard batter out of commission, as well as their general's inspiring presence, the closest guy they could use basically for the leadership is the Wizard's leadership, who is located in those handgunners behind the Imperial Guard guys. So Rommel's Rangers, as well as Queen's Rangers, which are those skirmishing units, they fill their leadership roles, so they don't do nothing. Basically, the Panzer Baron, it fills its leadership roles, it does nothing. The Blue Company fills its leadership roles, they can't do anything, and the Imperial Guard also fill the leadership role, so they can't do anything either. The only units that were successfully able to do anything was the Wizard, Victor Helsbrad, I think his name is. He's the wizard in the back there. He passed his leadership test so he can cast spells, as well as the handgunner unit, which is that massive unit. I think they're called the Yellow Company. They were able to also pass their leadership test as well. And you also got the Panzerwolf, which is the black primed steam tank. It also passed as well. So because of that, they move rocketing forward, and basically that is the only thing that moves throughout this entire army. So stupidity definitely paying me dividends because of that final transmutation spell. So with movement out of the way, we go directly to the magic phase, which was pretty uneventful for my opponent because he rolled a 1 and a 2, so basically his magic phase was pretty much non-existent. I was able to dispel everything he had as well, so because of that, magic phase really didn't pan out for him. So with magic out of the way, we go directly onto the shooting phase. Unfortunately for my opponent, when the Panzerwolf basically opened up with its cannon, the cannon misfired when it hit the impacting point, so because of that, there was no real impact for the cannon to go anywhere, so basically his engineer had to use his repeating handgun in order to hit one of the guys, managed to plink off one wound on one of my bombardiers, so that's pretty much shooting on this side of the board. And not to be outdone by their steam tank, the Yellow Company, which is the handgunners, open up on my Blight Kings. They open up on those guys, and that light infantry unit basically is pretty tough now with seasoned soldiers. Those handgunners, not only do they gain light armor, but they also get a +1 in ballistic skill as well, so that's pretty deadly. I was not expecting that. So because a lot of their shots basically made it, some of them couldn't penetrate, some of them couldn't because of the heavy armor, then plus is the Iron Fist as well, so that kind of lucked me on that one. They managed to inflict 7 wounds onto that unit, so they killed 2 of my ogres, and they also managed to put a floating wound onto one of my other tribesmen as well, so that part was pretty sad. I had to take a panic check, but luckily for me, unlike my opponent, my battle standard bearer and my general are still alive, so they passed their leadership test no problem. And so with that out of the way, shooting is done, and since there's no close combat, we go directly on to turn number 2. So this is turn number 2, Ogre Khans, and this is after the movement phase. And as you can see in this picture, basically I just sent everything forward again. I basically sent my Wrathmongers with my generals with my BSB, as well as the Blight Kings with my Great Shaman. Charged both those units. Both those charges made it. I sent the Bruisers into the left skirmishing unit and my Tries into the right skirmishing unit. My plan is basically to steamroll those guys over with impact hits and then charge directly into the Imperial Guard movement. And as you can see there, I also kind of snuck my Bombardiers up over the crest of the hill as well because I plan on getting off more shots onto the basically the Blue Company, which is located there, so that way that heavy infantry company can't flank charge my Tribesmen on that part, so I'm setting those up for a shot there. As you can see on the left-hand side there, my Thunder Cannons basically trundle forward again and start setting them up for a perfect shot to land that last steam tank to make sure that they don't have any problems there. So that's pretty much movement on this side of the board. For the magic phase, basically, I had a really low one. Basically, I rolled 4 dice is what I ended up getting with my pool. My opponent basically got 3, so it wasn't really much of a magic phase going on there. Basically, what I did is I took all my dice and I focused it on one more blast in order to get the steam tank. Basically, I used the old Searing Doom spell, which gives me 2d6 hits on using metal shifting ability. So basically, I cast on that one. My opponent wasn't able to dispel it, so because of that, I basically sent that Panzer Baron to hell and destroyed that steam tank, which is pretty awesome as well. I forgot to mention, if you look on the bottom there, the kind of the center photo there, I actually received another wound on one of my ogres, my tribesmen. I forgot that the units both stood and shot is what they did with their weapons, and so because of that, I inflicted one more wound on my tribesmen. So yeah, that pretty much makes up the magic phase on this one. One steam tank down, one more to go. And because I was unable to get that spell of a transmutation of gold, basically the stupidity rules that we had for the opponents are basically gone now, so that magic fill went away, which is kind of like a mixed blessing because in the shooting phase, my shooters there, my bombardiers, opened up onto that unit of Blue Company mercenaries again, opened up with Hellfire attacks as well, managed to plink off another 8 more of those guys. Basically, there's only a handful of those guys left, and since they're down to a quarter of their troops, they test for panic, they can't re-roll for leadership, there's no general's leadership to go off it, they're going off their own unmodified 7 leadership, and they fail. So when they flee a wonderful 10 inches, and so because of that, that completely goes off the board. Unfortunately for me, though, I'm starting to realize I might have made a mistake because now I might have gotten rid of the Blue Company and prevented them from flanking my tribesmen, but that black painted tank, the Panzerwolf, I basically left that one alone, and so because I got a powerful feeling that thing's going to come charging at my flanks and start tearing me apart a new one, so I got to do something about that steam tank because now it's beyond the crest of the hill. My thunder cannons can't hit it, so because that's going to be bad news. So that's the end of shooting on this side of the board. Shooting for my thunder cannons didn't go according to plan either. The first thunder cannon, which is turned backwards, as you can see there, basically rolled a misfire on his fire. So because of that, I had to roll on the misfire chart. Luckily for me, I rolled a 4, so he's unable to shoot this turn or the next. So I'm thinking about sending these bad boys in to charge into the flanks of that unit there, so that way they can land some supporting attacks as well. The other thunder blaster tried to take out the wizard by trying to sniping off the cannon, but unfortunately for him, I overshot the target way bad, and so because of that, that shot didn't go so well for that. So Thunder Cannon is not looking so great on this part. So that is the end of the shooting phase for this one. And the close combat phase was a slaughter for those skirmishers. I felt so bad for those guys, it wasn't even funny. Combined with impact hits, the Skull of Queen Get, as well as a Dragon Skin banner, basically those skirmishers didn't stand a chance whatsoever. I think pretty much impact hits and I think a couple of Ogre striking back basically finished them off. Those skirmishers' attacks basically just bounced off my toughness, so they didn't stand a chance whatsoever. So because of that, I completely destroyed those 2 units. I then overrun both of my units directly into the Imperial Guard. Unfortunately for me, because it's an overrun and it's not a charge, I don't get impact hits for the next round of combat, but at least now I'm kind of stuck in there now with those Imperial Guardsmen, and I could basically start proceeding to basically making those guys into canned food by eating them alive. So that's what I'm planning out for that one. So that rounds up combat phase, and with combat over, that leads us directly into turn 2 for my opponent. Alright, with that, we're on turn number 2 for the Empire of Sonnstahl, rather. This is the picture after move phase. You can see there's not much movement going on for my enemy because most of his guys are stuck in close combat, and his handgunners basically can't move because they're kind of stuck back there wedged between the back of the board and the Imperial Guard. But the Pain Train, which is the Panzerwolf, that steam tank comes running up that hill. He rolled out of the box. I think he rolled 18 or 17 inches for his movement roll, and that thing basically just blew whistle and just charged right directly into my bombardiers. So unfortunately for me, I think those bombardiers are going to get crushed, and I got the sneaky suspicion my opponent's going to turn that steam tank right into my rear end. And that's hoping if my thunder cannons don't do something about it before then. So yeah, that pretty much makes up the movement on this side. Magic phase coming kind of poorly for my opponent. He basically rolled up 10 dice. I basically had 6. So because of that, he had a pretty strong magic phase going on for him as well. He spent a lot of his dice trying to get those balance spells, those blessings off on his army, but I managed to get rid of dispel all those. I think he was just trying to pull out dice for my dispel dice because one of the spells he tried to pop next was the stone skin one that gave his Imperial Guardsman +2 toughness. I threw all of my remaining dispel dice at that one and got that dispelled, but that basically gave my opponent to give his unit Life Waters, I think it's called. It's the one that gives you a +5 regen onto his Imperial Guardsmen, so now they get through both their heavy armor and shield as well as their regen bonus, which is kind of rough. And another thing I kind of like about this game is the concept of parry, which is kind of neat. On the parry rules, you can't basically strike on your opponent better than a +4 if they have hand weapon and shield, which is kind of cool. It's not so great for me though because I'm ogres and ogres have a really poor weapon skill to begin with. So basically, I'm striking at a negative for me because even though they might be stronger, they're not as skilled as these Imperial guys. But I kind of like that a little bit because it kind of offsets things a little, so which is kind of cool in that part as well. Basically makes hand weapon shield guys deadly, which is kind of neat, I guess. So because of that, Magic Face looks pretty strong for my opponent, and without any further ado, we go to shooting as well as combat. Shooting was pretty much a wash for my opponent, but in the combat phase, that steam tank basically destroyed my entire unit of boomers. My bombardiers, I mean. That guy's grind attacks was brutal. He managed to kill off every single one of my bombardiers with his grind attack and managed to put 2 wounds in the last one. And then the engineer, I mean, the freaking engineer of the tank basically went like Hadouken right one more time right into the face of one of my bombardiers and managed to kill him. I was unable to save the wound, so he managed to destroy that entire unit and wipe them out. Luckily for me, my 2 units of ogres are engaged in close combat, so they didn't really have to worry about testing for panic. But I thought that was kind of cool. It's kind of like that thing just ran him over the pain train, and it's kind of like hiya with a stick into the face and managed to kill the last of my from my bombardiers. So that's close combat on the hill here with the steam tank. So that was pretty cool. And close combat on this side, oh my god, it was a freaking massacre for my opponent. Unfortunately for my opponent, without that strength bonus of using great weapons, basically his weapons basically just bounced off my armor when it came to my bruisers. He didn't manage to inflict a single wound on any one of my bruisers. And my bruisers, when combined with with their abilities with Spine Splitter, as well as the attacks from my Great Khan, as well as the bonuses from the Dragonhide banner, basically made it almost impossible for my guys to miss. They just basically chewed through their half of the unit. And then on my my Blight Kings on my right-hand side, which is my tribesmen. They managed to kill another one of my tribesmen and managed to inflict another wound onto one of my other guys as well. None of the wounds basically struck into my Great Shaman. That's because only like one guy could really attack back. So because of that, my guys just brutalized that poor unit of guardsmen. It was no joke. We just chewed those guys like it was nobody's business. The amount of high-strength attacks my unit was putting out was ridiculous. It was pretty bad, and so because of that, we destroyed that unit. Basically, they broke. They had I think a -10 to their modifiers, without any battle center bearer to be there or general to basically dish out magical attacks in the return, or without their leadership bonuses. Basically, they fled. They broke. We pursued. We overran. We killed those guys, and then we charged directly into the front of the handgunners. And basically, we just chewed right through those Imperial Guardsmen like they were nothing, and that was pretty bad for my opponent. So that's common on this side. And it's also at this time of the battle that basically my opponent calls the game. He basically looks at what he's got left over and he surrenders. So that brings us to the end of the game. So you can see on the battlefield, most of my ogre guys are still basically there. All he manages to have left is his steam tank as well as his handgunners. But instead of carrying out the combat, he basically surrenders at this point. So yeah, that ends our very first game of playing in 9th edition. So with that, it's time to go on to the after action report.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Sure, I could have stayed in the past. Could have even been king. But in my own way, I am king. Hail to the king, baby.
All right, now it's time for the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for next time for the next time we play another edition of 9th Age. So this was once again 9th Age battle report number 1. It was I, Commander CheapSkate of the Legion of the Hellmouth, and my Ogre Khans versus King Khalifa of the Schwarzwald Free Companies with the Empire of Sonnstahl. And in the end, it ended up being a victory for yours truly. So let's talk about what some of the things I thought about the game and what made it so interesting. Alright, one of the first things I want to talk about is the Mark of Change, which is basically one of the abilities I had due to the Hellfist big name that my Tyrant took. Mark of Change basically won me this battle. My ability to be able to use Hellfire as an ability to gain extra wounds for hits already done at Strength 3 against humans was especially epic on this one. It basically helped me kind of inflict twice as much casualties on my opponent because of that part. So because of that, I really like the Mark of Change on this one. Basically, with the Hellfist, I can't take certain units. I can't take Hunters, for example. I can't take saber-tooth tigers and other kind of things like that, or yetis, or any of the beast versions that are associated with the Ogre Khans army. But you know what? That's kind of like a nice little trade-off. Yeah, my army is a little bit smaller, and yeah, my points are very concentrated, but at the same time, that ability to take marks for the Dark Gods is basically helping me out on that part. So Hellfire, definitely a big bonus for this one. Another thing that really helped me out for this one was the heavy armor that for my entire core basically saved me a lot from range attacks as well as close combat. So having that heavy armor as well as that parry save for my tribesmen as well as having it for my bruisers basically helped me out a lot as well. And let's be honest, the only reason why I won this battle at all is because of the transmutation of gold. That spell won me this game. Without their general and without their BSB, basically took away all of the Empire of Sonnstahl's energy as well as any age that that army basically had. With his general being gone, he didn't have the ability to display orders. With his BSB being gone, that average level of leadership can be amplified more with leadership from the battle center bearer and for rerolls with leadership. So because of that, that won me this. And plus, in combination with his rule with stupidity, having his own army able to move around basically was a lifesaver. So that's one of the other things that basically won me for this battle as well. Now, the only real concern that I have for my army on this side is basically the low weapon skill of mine that my units basically have. Most of my troops have a weapon skill level of 3, around 4. It's not until you get to the mercenary vendors that you start seeing higher weapon scores. So because that's going to be a hard problem when I take on things like high elves, a lot of the elven armies actually, or things like the Knights of Equitane would be another army I might have trouble with, or Knights of the Dark Gods, or Dwarves. So because of that, my strength and my toughness will help me win the day for most of the things I'll be facing out there, but that low weapon skill is going to be a problem, so I might have to rethink about with some of the spells I might use for my guys in order to help boost that up. So yeah, that's going to be the one major concern that I have for this army. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about some of the negatives as well as the positives that I have for this game as well. Alright, so let's start off with some of the negatives about the Ninth Age. The two biggest things that I don't like so far is a couple of pet peeve things that my friends and I kind of agree on that we don't like. One of the things we don't like is the weakened canon rules of the game. One of my friends is a big Empire player, and I think it kind of takes a lot of the strategy of it out, in my opinion, as well. I know a lot of naysayers and haters out there will say that cannons were too overpowered and that they could rip through units pretty quickly, or they could definitely take out large targets like monsters and things like that, but in my opinion, that kind of took out a lot of the fun of the game as well. I played a lot of armies where I didn't really have cannons. So because of that, I basically had to leapfrog my units from terrain piece to terrain piece in order to take cover from cannons. So I thought that was kind of like a neat aspect of that game. With the weakened cannon rules, you kind of remove that option out of there, which I don't care for all that much. And another thing I don't really care for either is that how they put unit size caps on units as well. That kind of bothers me a little bit. It's kind of like, oh, it's not fair that you can have this huge unit of whatever, and that's unfair to do that. I don't understand why that happens. I mean, it's not like in real life that the bad guys and the good guys agree on the number of troops they're going to use and cap it at that level either. So that's one thing I don't care for either. So my gaming group and I were decided we're going to ignore that. So if there's like a thing that says you can only take one of a kind, we're going to ignore that rule. Same thing with unit cap sizes as well. We're going to ignore that as well. We don't like that at all. So we're probably going to run without that one. And since Ninth Age is a fan created game, basically we can do that. So that's the only real negatives I have about Ninth Age. Other than that, let's talk about the positives. Alright, so let's talk about the positives of the Ninth Age. And one of the things I like about it is I like kind of like the newer options that you have for units. It kind of makes things interesting. Things like this Hellfist ability and giving Mark to the Dark Gods is kind of neat. I also noticed you could do things like add ambushing rules or skirmishing rules to units, which looks pretty awesome as well. So with these newer options out there, it makes things interesting. It kind of keeps things on your toes and it kind of keeps you not from being complacent. That's one of the things I like about it. Another thing I like about this game, this could sound kind of corny because I know you're trying to break away from Warhammer, but it kind of feels like this would have been the next version of Warhammer Fantasy anyway, and this is what the game should have been instead of the weirdness that we got with Age of Sigmar. So it's kind of nice in that sense. It's kind of familiar at the same time. There's some newer things, kind of address a lot of issues that the previous game had, and so that's one of the things I like about it. It feels like I'm going back to my roots. It's like I'm going home, is basically what it's like. And then the last reason why I kind of like this system is kind of the most interesting of all. It's kind of fun sticking to the man with something like this. It's fan created. It's kind of like sticking our finger into the eye of the man in the establishment and saying like, F you guys, we're going to keep on gaming like we want to. And I like seeing how it's gaining traction throughout the communities as well as online. So that part's kind of cool as well. So all in all, very excited for the positives of this Ninth Age. I had a blast playing this game. My buddies had a good time watching the game as well. So expect to see a lot more of these Ninth Age battle reports popping up on my channel now. So yeah, that pretty much rounds it for this game. So battle report number 1 from Ninth Age is in the books. Please feel free to comment, like, subscribe, add information that you like. And yeah, see you on the flip side. Bye.